don't know that we need the recording started yet.
Right. Thanks, Melody. Good afternoon, Chris.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
We will spend about 30 minutes. We have a set of questions to go over with you, but we'll begin with introductions. And I will point out, and Melody very helpfully included in the chat, that our interviews are being recorded. The recordings will be shared with Common Council late today and then available to the public on Monday. Okay.
Great.
So I'm Laura Lewis, mayor, and it is my former seat on Common Council, Fifth Ward, obviously, that we are interviewing candidates for. Okay, so for introductions, I'll turn it next over to Rob Gerhardt.
Hi, Chris. It's
Hi.
good to have you with us. I'm a Common Council member from the 3rd Ward, and our vacancy rules call for the other member of the ward where the vacant seat is, as well as another member of council. So tag, I'm it. Nice to meet you.
Thanks.
Hi, Chris. I'm Robert Quintelmo, and I am the other 5th Ward representative. So I represent you and Fall Creek and Cornell Heights.
Thank you. And I'm Chris, and I suppose you have already read about who I am a little bit. So,
yes, thank you. Thank you. So, Chris, can you begin by sharing with us what you see as the role of alderperson and how you would hope to achieve what you see as the role of alderperson?
I see the role of alderperson as a representative for the neighborhood and the ward in which that person comes from. So my position would be, my role would be to represent the constituents in Ward 5, their concerns, their, issues that they're bringing forth, and also in reverse to relay information back as appropriate. So I see that communication, whether it's, via newsletter or just how that would happen. I think, Robert, I believe you send out occasional newsletters, and I think that's really an effective way to communicate the happenings of Common Council. And so I guess that's what I see the role of the alderperson being.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think are the biggest challenges facing the city currently, and what are your ideas? How would you address those challenges?
It seems to me that one of the biggest challenges is fiscal limitations. So the needs and the wants of the community versus the amount of income that's been generated. And I think that that's a big piece. I think right now, I think that there's a need for trust building, transparency, and collaboration. And I think that that would be my, what I would be bringing to Common Council is an intention to communicate well, to work with Common Council members and the constituents that I represent, as well as all the other offices and committees that we would be charged to work with and to represent and to legislate. So I think what I would bring is a real desire for effective communication and collaboration amongst ourselves and with those that we are interfacing with. So I think, you know, there's the fiscal challenges right now, but there's also, you know, there's all the issues that have come up recently, looking for police chief. There's going to be a need for a fire chief. There's, you know, admittedly, there's been a disconnect, it seems like, between some municipal workers and city workers and Common Council. And there's no fault. I'm not attributing any blame. I'm just saying that it seems to be that there's a disconnect. And so working to bridge that with clear communication and really an intention to work together for the good of the city.
Thank you. You know, we talk about challenges. The flip side of that coin, of course, is opportunity. So what do you see as the biggest opportunities in Ithaca right now?
I think Ithaca is very forward thinking in so many ways. The whole discussion with reimagining and with, I'm forgetting the other, reimagining. There's, why am I forgetting? There's another.
Reimagining public safety.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And so with that, the Community Justice Center, there's citizen involvement in this city that is exciting. The fact that I can sit here and talk to you folks and it's really wonderful about our city, and to think that I see your faces around. We're a connected city in many ways, and in some ways not. So I think those are, there's a lot of opportunity with the growth that's happening. There's the flip side, you know, the challenges with that, but there's opportunity with that. There's, it's a very interesting and challenging place to live, because the assumptions that we come with are challenged by someone, as they should be. And I find that very exciting about being a citizen here in Ithaca.
Thank you. Thank you. The next question, you touched upon it a bit in an earlier answer, but let me ask you, how would you plan on connecting with your constituents and connecting your constituents with city government?
Well, let me first say that I have ideas, but I'm not, I don't have the experience, right? So the first thing I would do is learn from my colleagues about what works and what hasn't worked so well. But I do think that inviting people, being open and available, and inviting people to communicate their needs and to really figure out what's going on. I mean, you know, there's currently a discussion in Fall Creek about the 5G, the AT&T, you know, cell phone towers, and just really trying to understand the issues. And that requires time, and it requires an intention, it requires availability. So, and then in reverse, I think that there is a need for communication about what's happening, because transparency really, I you know, to the extent that it's possible, right? Transparency is essential for building trust and unity. So I guess specifically, being accessible via email. I'm a person in the neighborhood. And so there's that good old fashioned, walk and talk. And then there are means like newsletters and consistent communications to connect Common Council and city to the constituents.
Thank you. We have these set questions, but also want to allow opportunity for you to share with us a closing statement or provide any additional information that we've not covered in the questions.
Thank you. Some of this I may have already addressed in my cover letter. I've lived in Ithaca, let's see, my daughter's 23, almost 24, so that long, basically. Moved here when she was 3 months old. And I've lived within 2 blocks of where I currently live the entire time. So I feel very connected to this neighborhood and to the people. And I've been in education, so I've had, I think one thing I would bring is a real passion for what young people are experiencing in this town. And I think it is different than I think young people, it's exacerbated by COVID, but we need ways to engage young people in really healthy, productive, interesting ways in our city. And that is something that I really bring with me. And let's see, so you've read my resume, so I don't need to go on about that, but I'm very passionate about effective communication. I mean, I've used that in my work, but also in my own life. I feel that there's, that's kind of key to who I am. And let's see. Oh, yes. I don't know if this is the elephant or not, but I am married to the City of Ithaca Fire Marshal. And so I want to recognize that, there may be an occasion where I might have to abstain from a particular vote. I don't know, but I do think that my thinking is my own thinking, and I'm representing constituents, but I want to acknowledge that there might be some situations where I need to recognize that relationship exists. So I hope that makes some sense.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Thank you. We also want to allow opportunity for you to ask any questions you may have of us.
Thank you. I do have, one is not really a question, one's more of a little bit of a statement. I think that Common Council, it's got to be a huge learning curve. So I find that really exciting. And I'm very aware that it doesn't matter if I read the minutes for the last Common Council meeting. And I thought, okay, I would have my work read out, laid out for me, because there is so much to really learn about. There's so much to learn. So I find that exciting. And I just want to say that I recognize huge learning curve. And I'm also curious, I know that council members work on other committees, and I was wondering if I could hear a little bit more about that, how that works, and whether this Ward 5 comes with, you know, a certain position on other committees or.
Yeah, I'll turn that over to my colleagues to
Sure.
address our committee structure as well as liaison appointments.
Yeah, no, those are great questions. Thank you. And you're right, it's a big learning curve, but you know, you have colleagues to lean on. And also one of the things I always like to say is, you know, I learned early on to value the city staff and especially the leadership in those departments. So you can lean on them a little bit, you know, appropriately to help get up to speed, so to speak. But yeah, we are required as council members to sit on one of the two standing committees. So that's either city administration or planning and economic development. And the mayor makes those appointments. Right now, we don't know what those assignments are, except for the two chair roles. I think the mayor is waiting in part to kind of understand who we might be recommending in this role to help figure out where they best fit. In addition to those two standing committees, we have several other appointments. They are liaison appointments to a variety of boards and committees. Those are sometimes inside the city. So they may be a board like the Ithaca Landmarks Preservation Commission, which has been one of my appointments last year. Or they may sometimes be outside organizations. Like we have a couple of seats on TCAT as a partner to that consortium, and the Joint Sewer Commission, SJC. I can't remember.
Special Joint Commission.
Special Joint Commission,
Special Joint
right.
Committee.
It is the wastewater treatment plant ownership by the three parties. So, and those activities vary widely. Sometimes you're a voting member of a group. Sometimes you're just an observer and a non-voting member, and that changes the sort of level of activity. Sometimes you're required to go to pretty regular meetings, and other times they might meet more sporadically. So it really varies. And the mayors, our current mayor as well as our past mayor, always try to align your interests and your experiences with where you might be assigned. But they ultimately have the prerogative to make that assignment. So we all, at least I do, just say, put me where you think it's best for the city, but here are my preferences, right?
Yeah. Okay, that answers that. And then if I'm currently a board member for the Ithaca Community Gardens, so I don't know if that, I mean, I'm sure people on Common Council are board members in other organizations, so that's not an issue, I'm guessing.
Well, in some instances, and for example, for many years, I served on the board of Ithaca Neighborhood Housing Services. Their bylaws, as well as perceived conflict of interest. So I resigned from that board when I was elected to council, but that doesn't pertain to all organizations. And I know that Rob has been a longstanding member of. His water bottle tells you where. State Theater.
Yeah. Okay.
So we would talk about whether there would be either real or perceived conflict of interest in any other areas you may be involved.
And to your point earlier about your spouse being at the fire marshal, you know, those are, we've had people in similar situations in the past, and, you know, just making sure that everyone's aware of that and when you would be recusing yourself from discussions or votes, you know, and that you've already touched on it. Transparency is a big, important element of that. And so we just make sure everyone's aware.
Yeah. Okay.
Robert, did you have any additional comments on?
Nothing additional. Yep. Hit all the points.
Any other questions for us, Chris?
I don't think so. At this point, I just want to appreciate the opportunity to be here. And, you know, if we have an opportunity to work together in the future, I look forward to that and to collaborating for the good of this community. So just appreciate you inviting me here.
Thanks, Chris. Did
Right.
also want to let you know the timeline we're operating with. So we conducted interviews yesterday and today. The vacancy committee is charged with making a recommendation to Common Council, and we will do so by the February 1 council meeting. If the recommendation from the committee is approved by council, then that new council member would be sworn in at the February 1 council meeting.
So that person would know ahead of time that they were being brought forth as a recommendation, obviously, right? You wouldn't have all of us show up. Okay.
Yes. So it will be, a matter of, I don't know, a week or 10 days. We are very interested in having a full Common Council going forward.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for your time, and best wishes as you make your decisions.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for being
Thanks,
with us
Chris.
today.
Sure.
Yes,
Nice
thanks
to meet
for
you.
joining us. Bye.
Bye. Hello, Marguerite. Make sure you're unmuting yourself.
Hello, I'm unmuted. Happy New
There
Year.
you go. Happy
How are
New Year. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
We have a set of questions. We plan the interview to be 30 minutes. We'll certainly allow opportunity for you to ask questions yourself. As we start, just a reminder that our interviews are being recorded. The recordings will be shared with Common Council members late today, and then with the general public on Monday.
Okay.
So just by way of introducing the vacancy committee members, myself, Laura Lewis as mayor, and I'll turn it over to my colleague, Rob Gerhardt.
Hi, Marguerite. It's good to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, so our vacancy rules call for the other member of the ward where the seat has been vacated, as well as one other member of council. So tag on it, and happy to have you with us today.
Hi, Margarita.
Hey,
Nice
hello.
to see you.
Nice
You know
to
me.
see
For public edification, since it's recorded, I'm Robert Quintelmo, and for consistency, I represent the 5th Ward.
Nice to see you. We've had some good phone calls, but I haven't really seen you almost face to face.
Yes, yes.
Zoom face-to-face.
Exactly.
So Marguerite, could you begin by sharing with us what you see as the role of alderperson, and if you were a representative of the 5th Ward, how would you achieve some of that role as alderperson?
Well, I've been in the city for over 40 years, and so I've watched the city closely. I've been involved in lots of debates over the years, lots of projects, efforts, and I've always been involved in this way. I think Common Council members are, really critical to sort of bringing the community together, and I think it's very important for them not to act within a vacuum, right? And I think that figuring out how we communicate with people within our wards and then how we communicate across wards is just really, really critical to better engaging people in civic life of the city. I mean, there were only 5,000 people who voted in the last mayoral election. And, we can obviously do better than that. And I think communication is really extremely important. And I think we're at a really critical time. We are becoming more and more a sort of uber rich at the same time that we have a lot of poverty. And we're really resource deficient in dealing with all the things that we need to deal with. So I think for me, that's my focus. It's kind of about finances right now, money. How do we do what we want to do? How do we do what we aspire to do? because I think our resources are extremely limited and that we are going to need to figure out other income streams. I don't think we're on a sustainable path. So I think a council person, there's so many issues in the city, right? But to take a sort of big picture approach and to be able to deal with the small details, really critical. And in keeping the community engaged or getting them engaged.
Okay, thank you. There's a lot there. And the next question asks you to identify what you think are the biggest challenges facing the city right now and how you would address some of those challenges.
Well, I think prioritizing our funding so that we can really fund staff some basic services is just critical. I think that one of the most important things on our plate right now is going to be how do we negotiate, what do we negotiate with Cornell and with Ithaca College? I've been spending a bit of time just looking over pilot program information, from across the country and looking specifically at Ivy League institutions. And it's pretty easy to see that Cornell is not paying even close to what would be considered a fair share by some of these national models that are out there of what they use in terms of community services. And what their peer institutions are contributing to their communities. And so, the last agreement was for 20 years, which is a very, very, very long time. We're still in pretty rough shape as far as I can tell. And, I looked over some numbers just recently, and if Cornell were paying taxes on all of the property that it was assessed for, it would be paying almost $50 million a year in taxes. Now, obviously, we're not going to get that, but we've got to do better than 3.2 million or whatever it is that they're contributing. So I think that is really critical. Another thing is, how do we, also related to this, because it's always about finance, right? How do we work more closely with our neighboring municipalities and with the county government? We are at the center of the county. We're the county seat. So many, many things fall on us, and our shoulders are broad, but the burden's pretty heavy. With the percentage of property in the city that is tax exempt, the burden for all of these resources, which many of which are community-wide resources, county-wide resources, the burden falls on the taxpayers of the city of Ithaca. And the city of Ithaca taxpayers, I think, are doubly taxed in many instances. Like, we pay for TCAT through our city taxes, and we pay for TCAT through our county taxes. And I just think it's critical to have constructive, positive conversations with the county and with other municipalities to come to some better agreements about how we share services. And I mean, even down to basic things like, couldn't we just borrow the vacuum cleaner that Cayuga Heights uses to vacuum up leaves? That would be awesome. Instead of, having people stuff them into bags and then they have to pay to get them out. It's a huge disincentive, right? Other basic services I'm talking about needing to manage specifically. We're in winter, and there's been a lot of discussion about this. I know a lot of public discussion. The clearing of our sidewalks and the clearing of our crosswalks, critical. I mean, these are basic things besides potholes in the state of our old water pipes. And I think these are all really, really critical issues. Another one that I don't think is on enough radar screens is the scarcity of 55 plus housing that is not income eligible housing. So I mean housing that falls into that middle market of housing. And I don't mean, I say market rate, but what I really mean is, couldn't we do something entrepreneurial that would be better than market rate? Because market rate's pretty expensive, $4,000 plus a month. And then for people who can afford it, you go to Kendall when you want to downsize, and the buy-ins, $350,000 to $650,000, and the monthly fees are 6,000 to 8,000. It's becoming, we're becoming a very, very like uber rich. And at the same time, we have this large poverty. And so I think those are huge challenges. I think redevelopment, figuring out about opportunities that we could do maybe in an entrepreneurial way with regard to senior housing, with regard to the vitality of Stewart Park. I think the Masonic Temple building has been on my radar screen for like 20 years, literally. Well, not 20, since about 2007. I had a big plan that I was going to propose to Cornell, and then, the economy crashed and I've just shelved it. But I've made 2 walkthroughs of that building with 2 different property managers for Jason Fain. And I just think it's a wasted opportunity. It's an incredible building. We could be doing better. So basically, I guess I see us as being in this amazing opportunity to really set a sort of new bar, national bar for university community partnerships and relationships, and also senior 55 plus housing.
Okay,
I don't know how many questions you have, so I'm not sure how long you want me to go on for each of these. You can go like this if I'm going on for too much.
No, that's okay. We only have 50 questions. So.
Oh, okay, no problem. I can talk about this endlessly, so yes.
Well, you actually are responding to our next question, which is what you think are the biggest opportunities in Ithaca right now. And you've begun to address some of those, but just wanted to give you an opportunity to say more if you wanted to about the biggest opportunities in Ithaca right now.
Well, I think that the new developments, I think the money that was just received, though I haven't followed the details on this, but the money was just received for the historic buildings downtown to be renovated into housing. I think that's really exciting. I think it would be amazing if there were some condos put into that, or something that was in the sort of middle housing market range. I think that the city needs to talk to the county about this property that they bought on Tioga, between Tioga and Sears. If that turns into a parking lot, I think that would be an enormously wasted opportunity. That is critical space. They also bought that bank building. And that's right in the smack in the center of our downtown. That would be an amazing place for some senior housing. And I think there are a lot of opportunities in that area. I don't know if any of you have traveled to Montreal, but if you've seen any of those, they have these temporary, they're kind of like storage, what do I want to call them? Like storage boxcar kinds of things. They, the thing slides up and it's like a pop-up kind of shop and food shop, or, just like store. I think it would be kind of cool to think how we could reimagine what we could do at Stewart Park. And I don't mean anything that would be a blight on the landscape. So I don't mean anything along the shoreline, but further in, if we could create a kind of seasonal sort of little mini city down there, I think we'd have a nice, potentially a nice opportunity for that. I think it would be amazing to be able to get swimming back at Stewart Park. We live on a lake, and yet we have pretty limited access. I mentioned the Masonic Temple building. Those are just some of the things that come to mind for me right away. But obviously, everything comes back to funding, right? And for us to be progressive and proactive, we need to have more resources, because otherwise we're just being like a reactive kind of government and not a very forward moving and innovative government. And I think Ithaca deserves that.
Thank you. Thank you. How would you plan on connecting with your constituents in the Fifth Ward? And the second part of that question, how would you plan on connecting constituents with city government?
Yeah, well, I was co-chair of the Fall Creek Neighborhood Association. We reconstituted it after it had been dormant for like 15 years. And we actually, it was so long ago, it was just when listservs were beginning to come into vogue. So we set up the first, that listserv, which is still, I think it had maybe 75 members when we started it, and now I don't know how many it has, like thousands, and it's, it's used on a daily basis for all kinds of things. So I think electronic communication is obviously critically important, but I think meetings, I think we need neighborhood meetings. We should have we should have a citywide council, neighborhood council, so that we can also be better informed about what are the current issues in each of the neighborhoods and what are the citywide, the broader overarching issues that we want to deal with. Because again, I don't think legislators should be working in a vacuum. It takes a lot of effort to get people engaged and involved. I've done that throughout my entire professional career and in many of the volunteer things that I've taken on. Communication is extremely critical. So I think in-person meetings, I think organizing broader, like neighborhood-wide, city-wide meetings, brainstorming. I like the idea of better utilizing our resources here, our people. I mean, we have so many people who have expertise in so much stuff. And I think it was a disappointment to me when many of the city committees that youth volunteers were abandoned. And I think that we could make some very good use of many, many people in quite a few different areas. Another thing, there in our newly configured ward, I want to mention, students. I mean, students are, I've spent my entire adult life basically like working with students and building relationships with students. I mean, my last job, I had a staff of students, over 20 students who I worked with, and they pretty much all stayed in the job for 3 years from sophomore through senior year. So, I got to work with them really closely, and it was the most beautiful thing about my job, to tell you the truth, were the relationships that developed and the mentoring that happened. So, I've always been a very big proponent of intergenerational projects. And I think that we could be doing more with that in a formal way. I know that there are, I don't know how many internships are set up with the city right now, but I think that should be, that should be a really important piece of what we do. And I think, we would just all gain from it so much. One of the things that I did in my last job to help better orient students to downtown Ithaca was I created See You Downtown. And I don't know if any of you ever went to this festival, but it was, we did it for 4 years pre-pandemic. And then, I retired. They did run it this year. They didn't have as many people come down, but in the years that I was doing it, there were about 3,500 students who came to downtown Ithaca, and they came and they were part of the fabric of our community because they came and they performed, like down on the commons. And it was so beautiful to see it. It was international. It was so many different cultures. And it was so reflective of, I think, who we are as a community. And so I think figuring out better ways to connect with students, and in this ward, there would be many opportunities for that. Cleanup operations. I mean, a couple of months ago, I contacted the Office of Fraternity and Sorority Affairs to say, hey, what about a garbage cleanup? Like if you walk at the upper part of Buffalo Street, it's a mess. There's like garbage everywhere. College Town, garbage is everywhere. Why? Why do we have that? It's a simple call, to an office and, some communication with people to get people excited about doing something like this. And I think I would say that's another big interest of mine, just the aesthetics of the city and the aesthetics of College Town in particular is, it's pretty shocking, actually. And I think that we could be doing better. And I think that needs more communication, more liaison between Cornell University and us. What do we expect as a community, not just financially, but how do people fit into helping us with research, and how do people who are living off campus and living on campus fit into keeping our community looking the best it can possibly be and taken care of in the best possible ways.
Thank you. Thank you. We want to also give you an opportunity for any sort of closing statement to raise anything that has not been included in our questions.
Wow, I hit on a lot of stuff that I've been thinking about. I guess I would say, I'm a very curious person. I think I'm good at asking a lot of questions, and I think I'm pretty experienced at building relationships and partnerships. The program that I managed a support and resource center for first-year students for the last 7 years of my job at Cornell. And we hosted, probably, well over 100 programs a year. And most of those were partnerships. It was like, I would reach out to people in various places across the university and ask them to partner with us. And so I think that I'm experienced working with many, many people and many different kinds of people. I love brainstorming and brainstorming with groups of people. I love connecting people, and seeing those partnerships really produce something like super positive. We're all like in this, and we've got to figure out how we're going to come up with, I think, a more sustainable path for people to be able to live in the city. I think that the taxes are, they're just outrageous. And I think that, we all just pay it. And I think we know New York State is a high tax state, but I don't think we really know like how difficult it is here. And there are many, many places like University of Pennsylvania. They just worked into an agreement, $10 million a year for 10 years they're giving to public schools. I know Cornell doesn't have as big an endowment as some of these other Ivies, but Cornell's endowment at 10 plus billion is still like super big, and their operating budget is very, very large, and they're withdrawing a very small percentage from their endowment to put into their general operating budget. So I think there's room for quite a lot more to come out of there, and I think this is critical, really critical for us. So yeah, I think I have retired and I have more time on my hands, and so I feel like this would be a good opportunity to sort of plug back in a more serious way, and it looks like it would be mostly fun. I think it's hard, and I want to thank you all for your service, because I think it's mostly a kind of job that is pretty thankless, but exciting too, right? We have amazing people here. We have amazing resources. We can do incredible things, and I would like to do that with you.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you. We also wanted to allow some time for you to ask any questions you may have of us.
Yeah, I know this has been a little bit of a challenging time with council. Are all of the seats up in this next year, or they're all up, right?
Yes.
So would this appointment be for between now and November?
This appointment will be along the same lines as all council seats currently expire December 31, 2023, as will the mayor's seat.
Okay. So this seat, so this is January. So so then whoever gets this position, if they decided that they were going to stay more than these few months, they would need to put in their nominating petitions in the spring.
Yes, yes. So just to make sure to clarify, it is roughly a 1 year of service. So the person, and let me say something about our vacancy process. The vacancy committee conducts interviews and will make a recommendation to Common Council, and we anticipate doing that by the February 1 council meeting. And if there is agreement on council votes on this, then that individual, the new 5th Ward alderperson, would serve through December 31, 2023. Anyone who chooses to run for Common Council starting in 2024 would be required to engage in the petition process. And bear in mind that 2023 is going to be a significant year of transition as we transition to a council city manager structure. And that position too, that position of city manager will report to, and in fact, Common Council will be involved in the hiring of that first city manager. I think, as you know, we currently have a chief of staff who reports to the mayor, but a city manager will report to council.
And another,
so that is the structure for 2023, and that is our timeline for this vacancy.
Yeah, another important distinction of the difference between 2023 and 2024 is the election in November of 23 will seat people in different wards.
Right.
District, as you know, the boundaries have changed. So the people who are running this year are running for the new districts or new ward seats.
Right. So tell me what you most love and what you most hate about being a council person. Rob, you
turn that over to my colleagues.
So I think, like many of us, I have a long connection to the city of Ithaca in a variety of different ways. And, you know, stepping into this role was an extension of my commitment to community service to take on a role of public service. And I get great value in my own personal life from that. So I find it's, you know, there's that. What can be challenging, though, is we often find ourselves wrestling with very complex issues that will always make somebody unhappy, right? And it can be challenging to try to just wade your way through the complex issue, and that takes a lot of time and effort. And then B, trying to figure out what's the right thing to do, regardless of whether it makes one person less happy than another person. So it's a tricky balance.
I'd say for me, it's, you know, I'm a big policy nerd. I like, in a kind of an extension on what Rob's saying, I really enjoy the opportunity to take a look at the problems that, you know, the community's facing and try to, you know, filtering that through the prism of the resources that we have available, right? How do we address those problems, and how do we try to leave an issue, even if it's not perfectly solved, you know, better than it was when it landed on our plate. And that's, I think, the most rewarding piece of it. I don't always love being in City Hall until midnight, but, you know, that comes with the job sometimes.
And what do you all see as, what are your top 3 like priorities coming up?
Well, we certainly have multiple things related to reimagining public safety, which also includes the search for a new police chief. I think that's a huge priority for us. Trying to stay on track with the Ithaca Green New Deal is another. I think there are, you talked a lot about development issues in the city. I think getting us back on track with some neighborhood planning, as well as some issues that kind of stalled from pre-COVID, like the discussion about accessory dwelling units and how that helps the city create housing. You know, there's those are some of the things. I'm sure Robert has others. There's a lot going on.
I mean, you're singing my favorite songs, Rob. I think, yeah, like our top priorities, it's implementing successfully the promises that the city's already made, right? As Rob said, the Green New Deal, following through on reimagining public safety, making sure that those things are given very concrete benchmarks and targets for where we want to be as a community, and then making sure that the resources exist so that we can realize that vision. I'll also echo the housing piece. I think as even, you know, you touched on in your comments, there is, I think, a pretty substantial opportunity to increase what, you know, I know other sort of housing scholars refer to as like the missing middle piece, right? And making sure that, you know, there is creative ways to make housing more affordable and more sustainable for the people who already live here, especially those who are, you know, retiring in our community. And then lastly, I would say, you know, ensuring that there is that we're able to retain and support, you know, the excellent city staff that we have, and make sure that that work continues to be valued, and we're able to, you know, ensure that the people who are responsible for the service delivery are well supported, and that this remains an excellent place to work.
Another key priority is the transition to city manager.
Yeah.
Right.
And that transition will be taking place over the course of 2023. The one other element, I completely agree with the comments that have been made about housing and missing middle. We also have a working group looking at unsanctioned encampments in the city, and looking at the unhoused in the city is also a priority in this coming year.
Yeah.
So we've shared with you the timeline. You've shared a great deal of information and your experience and your background. We appreciate you spending this time with us this afternoon. And
Super fun.
we will be in touch probably within the next week to 10 days.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And again, you know, thank you so much for your service. It's we need you, and we appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Good to see you.
Thank you, Mark.
Happy New Year. Bye.
Happy New Year.
Hello,
Hello, Niall.
how are you?
Good, thanks. Happy New Year, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. We have 30 minutes about, and have a series of questions for you to address. But why don't we begin with introductions? And I'm assuming you can hear us okay?
Yep.
Okay, great, great. So my name's Laura Lewis. I am the mayor. My election in November meant that there is that open seat for which you're applying, the town council representing the 5th Ward. Turn it to my colleagues for introductions.
Hi, Niall. Rob Gerhardt. I represent the 3rd Ward on Common Council, and our vacancy rules call for a committee that's comprised of another member of council who sits in the same ward as the vacant seat, as well as a random member of council. So tag I'm it. You join
Strategic,
the
Rob, not random. No. Hi, I'm Robert Quintelmo. I am the other representative for the 5th Ward.
Nice to meet you.
Or maybe your name just needs to be Rob to be on the committee.
Niall, and by the way, is that the correct pronunciation of
Yes.
your name?
Right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Like the river, but my parents wanted to confuse people.
So, Niall, could you begin by telling us what you see as the role of alderperson and how you would achieve the that role, the goals of that role?
Yes, of course. The role of alderperson is to represent the people within the ward and to reflect their needs and try to address those needs in the best way possible.
And how would you be achieving that
For the
role?
5th Ward, there are a number of needs for the area. Three primary one that I've identified was a need to address the housing crisis that Ithaca is currently facing, trying to roll out the Green New Deal and achieve carbon neutrality before or by 2030, and by addressing labor in a more meaningful way, which I recently saw the appointment of a labor liaison, which is a great step in that direction.
Okay, great. Thank you. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing the city now, and how would you address those challenges?
Yeah, I feel like the biggest problem facing the city of Ithaca is the housing dilemma. Housing is correlated with a number of other issues facing the area, such as mental health concerns. So through addressing the housing issues that are currently facing us, that will be a great step into also addressing other problems in the area. One big step is, well, one big problem is trying to preserve the identity of many areas of Ithaca with a single homeowner, and trying to reconcile that fact with the number of new developments that are trying to be created by a handful of large developers in the area.
And how would you approach addressing these challenges?
Yeah. One good step is to make sure that everyone's needs are being heard by consulting with homeowner associations as well with developers. The Ithaca, The Ithaca Housing Authority has a great Section 8 policy, and we can further expand Section 8 housing by issuing bonds and trying to give them more resources to address affordable housing and housing in general.
Okay, thank you. There are and always will be challenges, and the flip side of that is opportunities. And can you tell us what you think the biggest opportunities are in Ithaca right now?
One of the biggest opportunities is the program to become a truly green city. The Ithaca bike sharing program was a great step in the right direction. And I feel like that program can be expanded greatly, specifically in the areas of Cayuga Heights and the Cornell Historic District. Right now, if you download the app and you look at the maps, there is a great discrepancy to where the bikes are located. Obviously, the program is still new, but there are a lot of opportunities to expand that program, especially if we choose to partner with potential fraternity or sorority houses and have them as places where we can congregate many bikes for a large population.
Okay. How would you plan to communicate and connect with your constituents? And also, how would you help constituents connect with city government?
Of course, it's a two-way street. Elder persons need to be accessible, and the constituents need to find themselves in a place where they feel comfortable connecting with their elder person. I will try my best to create a good social media presence on main platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and have my number and email available on the Ithaca website where people can feel free to reach out to me. Governance is a two-way street, and representation is the core of American democracy. Being able to understand what a constituent needs is important to achieving the goals that they want from their community. Online and social media is a big way to connect with them, and that would be the primary way where I would want to connect with people.
And how would you address some who do not have access to social media?
Of course, there's big discrepancies to who has access to internet and those who do not. I've experienced flyering for many organizations on campus. Sometimes all you need is a sign with a welcoming message and contact information, and that can go a long way.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything you would like to share with us that has not been included in these questions?
Yes. Can you further elaborate on that? Just add any information?
Anything you would like us to know about you, about your interests, why you're applying for this position, anything that's not been covered in the questions.
Okay, of course. Yeah. I'm from New York City originally, and I moved up to Ithaca to pursue a degree at the ILR school. And I adopted this community as a second home. Ithaca is a great community and has played a large role in many people's lives. And I hope to give back to Ithaca because it's given me a home and it's given many other people a home. In addition to that, Ithaca has a great opportunity to be a model for other cities in upstate New York. We have a commitment to progress that's unmatched by other cities in the region. The adoption of a TCAT fleet that's fully electric is a great way in the right direction of modeling ourselves as a green city, especially with climate change. We've seen in Buffalo recently the ravages of climate change because of the increased severity of storms. Ithaca can play a vital role as an example of how to create a really true green city.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And do you have any questions for us?
Yeah. So is this just for the selection process? So the selection process, is it just one interview?
Yes. Yes. We have a number of applicants. The vacancy committee will conduct interviews with each of the applicants. We will then make a recommendation to Common Council, and Common Council will vote on the vacancy committee recommendation. That will take place by the February 1 council meeting.
Okay, awesome. Another question I had is how alder persons are appointed to certain committees. Is it usually volunteering to join certain committees?
I'll turn that over to my colleagues for response.
Yeah, I would say, there are two standing committees of Common Council, the City Administration Committee and the Planning and Economic Development Committee. Typically, you serve on one of those and it can express your preferences for where you're most interested in being involved to the mayor, who retains the discretion as to where they're going to be appointing these individuals. And then we also liaise to a number of organizations around the community. Most of those are, you're there sort of as an informational representative. You're non-voting in most cases. There are some. I'm on the board of the Downtown Ithaca Alliance Business Improvement District, for example, where I am a voting member. TCAT is another case where our members are voting members, but for the vast majority of them, it is, again, what your interests are and how you can help funnel that information back to council so that they're apprised of it. And as with committee assignments, preferences are solicited by the mayor's office on an annual basis, but that is at their discretion.
Okay, thank you for that. Also, I had a question just regarding the agenda for Ithaca going forward for the year. The Department of Public Works and many other public employees have cited burnout, low wages, stagnant pay increases. Is there a collective, let's say, goals on how to deal with those issues in 2023?
Well, I'll jump in and say that there are staffing shortages in our organization in city departments, as there are in many across the country. Robert mentioned that he has been on a particular board. I have been on the board of TCAT, and TCAT has certainly struggled with recruiting drivers and mechanics, for example. So the city, we have challenges for sure. We have within our city workforce challenges with low morale and how to improve morale. We operate within a particular budget. Our taxpayers are demand services as well. We should. So it is a limit in terms of the funds that are available. I'll turn it to others for comment.
I mean, I guess I'll just add that, in following Common Council over the last few months, you've probably seen some of those tensions come into the meeting and really helped us shape some activities that'll move forward into the new year. So, for example, this week at Common Council, we created a liaison position that will have a member of Common Council, or maybe two members, be observers around our negotiations with employees. And so that's one of the tangible things that we're doing to try to help ensure that we find the best balance between supporting our employees within the resources that we have available.
Definitely. I had one more question. I found the information on the website. I know that a new green building code was created for new buildings, correct?
Yep.
Correct.
Is there a green building code instituted for existing buildings as well?
I don't know if that's if that's been put in place yet, but I know it is in the work plan to finalize. We're going to hear, let's see, in 2 weeks, we'll have our first Planning and Economic Development Committee meeting. This is one of the two subcommittees for Common Council. And at that meeting, I know that the Planning Department, Planning and Economic Development Department will outline their goals for the year, and we'll give them some feedback on the priorities for those goals. And I suspect that'll be among them.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Any other questions?
That's all.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. And we will be in touch probably within a week to 10 days.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks. Nice
Happy New
meeting you.
Year again. Hi, Sue.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We will spend about 30 minutes. We have a set of questions. Also give you opportunity to ask questions of us, but we'll start with introductions. As you know, I'm Laura Lewis, Mayor, and it is my seat that was vacated on Common Council as a result of the election. So I'll turn it to my colleague, Rob Gerhardt.
Hi, Sue. It's good to see you.
Nice to see you.
And our vacancy rules call for not only the member of Common Council who sits in the same ward, but one other member of council. So I had the privilege of being that person.
That's great.
Hi, Sue. I'm Robert Cantelmo. I am the other member of council representing the 5th Ward. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
And Sue, just so you are aware, I think it was mentioned earlier, but we are recording all of the interviews. Those interviews will be made available to Common Council, and early next week will be made available to the public. We also plan to make our recommendation, the Vacancy Committee's recommendation, to Common Council by the February 1 council meeting. So with the expectation that if the recommendation from the Vacancy Committee is approved, is voted on by council, that individual will be seated at the February 1st council meeting. So that's our timeline. Okay.
Sounds good.
So Sue, could you begin please by telling us what you see as the role of alderperson and how you would hope to achieve some of the goals of alderperson?
Well, I think it's important to know the area that you're representing and to take into account the, the needs of the neighborhood and the desires of the people that are living in that neighborhood, and to do the very best job for them.
And how would you go about addressing that?
Well, I know several of the neighbors, and I think getting out and talking to more people would be the ideal way to find out what's on people's minds and to get input from them, ideas from them, just to help in making decisions that will affect them.
Okay, great, thank you. What would you identify as the biggest challenges facing the city of Ithaca, and how would you address those challenges?
Well, my district, well, to back up just a little bit, I'm on the Landmarks Preservation Commission as well. And I talked to Brian a little bit about it and mentioned that I would be applying for this position. So my heart is really in making sure that the historic fabric of the neighborhoods is maintained and that wise decisions are made on their behalf. There's been a lot of changes around Ithaca, some not, in my opinion, not for the best. So having a voice in that process, I think, is of great interest to me.
Okay, thank you. The other side of the coin, the flip side of challenges are, of course, opportunities. And what do you think are some of the opportunities currently in the city of Ithaca?
Well, I don't know a lot of the workings of things that the Common Council's been doing. So I'll admit that right off the bat. But I'd like to know more about how the city operates. My family's been in the city since the 1860s. And I've been around the area for a long time. And just seeing all the changes has been an interesting process. So I think it's important for people that live in the city to have more input into what goes on.
Okay, thanks. And that is a good segue to the next question, which is, how would you plan on connecting with constituents? And a second part to that question is, how would you connect constituents to city government?
Well, I don't know how your meetings are set up now, but I know in the past people have been invited to come and view them. I think as far as our commission is concerned, most of the people that see it now see it on YouTube, or if they're speaking, they can become part of the Zoom community. But it'd be good to have people be able to come back in and see how things are going and to express their concerns and ideas to the rest of the board.
And a little bit more, if you could elaborate on how you, as an alderperson, would connect with constituents?
Well, I'd like to go and meet people at their homes. I mean, I wouldn't be adverse to going door to door. And so I know the people in our neighborhood, and I know we have several sororities and fraternities around us, and we've had dealings with them as well in the neighborhood. But the neighborhood has also been redistricted. So there's a little bit, I think, and working with the other person that's on the council that represents the same district, and, talking about ideas and, common goals, whatever, to do the best job for our group.
Yeah, you mentioned redistricting, and let me just point out, and my colleagues can add to this, the redistricting will be fully implemented next year, not in 2023. Okay. So all of Common Council seats will expire December 31, 2023. So our council members in 2023 continue to represent the wards as they are presently composed or comprised. And however, with all council seats expiring at the end of 2023 and the mayoral term expiring at the end of 2023, people will be carrying petitions, and those petitions will be for the redistricted wards. Okay.
Yeah, understood.
So we appreciate receiving your letter and resume and talking with you this afternoon, but is there any additional information you would like to share with us about your experience or your interest in this position that may supplement these questions that we're asking?
Oh, I was thinking about that a little bit. I think just being, I know that I haven't had any dealings in my neighborhood before with an alderperson. And I think that kind of face-to-face is an important part of the job. And so I guess my question would be, how have people in the past worked with their constituencies?
Yeah, good question. I'll turn it over to colleagues.
Yeah, I'll jump in since I currently represent USU. You know, the thing that I try to do, I'm not sure if you're you know, regular viewer or digest viewer of the listserv for Fall Creek, but I send out a monthly newsletter to that, and try to do in budget season a weekly, but otherwise a monthly office hours, either on Zoom or in person, to try to get that feedback. But you're right in highlighting that it is challenging to be able to you know, balance the time of folks who are, you know, in the community and don't necessarily, you know, it's the kind of thing where it's hard when unless there's an active issue you're dealing with. It's not always the easiest to try to do that during the workday for folks to try to get together, but you know, certainly would turn it over to other colleagues. But beyond that, I'd say, you know, we have our numbers available on the website. We try to be as available as possible. Always looking for new ideas, though.
Yeah, and so I'd add, you know, those of us who've been around in our areas for a long time, you know, we've lived in our house 24 years, and it's changed a lot in 24 years in terms of how people organized and connected and communicated around the issues of the neighborhood, and especially as they related to things like the city government. We used to have a lot more meetings, right? And they would be both, you know, sort of business meetings as well as social meetings. And I think even before the pandemic changed our habits around that, we had seen a lot more interest in just connecting via things like our email listserv. And that, as you, I think, noted, changes some of the dynamic. So yeah, it's been challenging to make sure you keep ways to maintain those connections with constituents. And right now, I feel like my only way mostly is through our neighborhood listserv.
So if I could just ask Robert, you must be down in the Fall Creek area, right?
Actually, I represent both Fall Creek and Cornell Heights, but no, I live in Cornell Heights.
Oh, you do? Okay. All right. So is there anything in Cornell Heights that, because we've been there 30 years and I don't think I've ever
there is also a Cornell Heights listserv, which I am happy to, I'm happy to connect with you offline and share that contact information.
That would be great. Yeah. So, yeah, those were I think the biggest concerns I had. Also being in Cornell Heights, we are surrounded by the student population, and also rents for the city is another concern that I have. So, you know, that's one of the things I would want to help work with if I were in this position. So other than that, I can't really think of anything else, but it's been a really great opportunity to find out there's a listserv and to hook up with you. That would be great.
Okay, great. Any last questions for any of us, Sue?
I think you're doing a great job there, Laura. Thanks for stepping up to that. And I can't really think of anything else to ask. Certainly, I know Rob from our being the liaison to our landmarks board, and I look forward to having a conversation with Robert about a listserv.
And I'm glad we finally brought the commission back together in person. It's been nice to see everyone face to face.
Yeah, I think we all like doing it better that way. Makes things.
Yeah, this has definitely been past 6 months of transitioning out of the worst days of COVID. We are not out of it totally,
Right.
but it is very nice to be attending in-person meetings, although Zoom, as we see this afternoon, allows opportunities to still conduct some of the business that we need to. But it's great to have council back in person and to have members of the public come to public comment also at council.
Okay. Yes. And I have to say that the Zoom concept is great because I'm in Albany doing this. So
I thought you might be there because I know you're a fan. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
That's great.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Sue. Appreciate you being with us this afternoon.
Thanks for contacting me. I appreciate it.
Bye, Sue.
Have a good day.
Bye.
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 Take care.